All right. That's a quick snapshot looking at the 2020 frontrunners among the Democratic candidates right now: Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. And to hear the so-called experts tell it, there's no way one of those guys isn't going to emerge as the nominee. But be careful coming to an instant conclusion, because back in 2003, at this exact time, Howard Dean was up big, and it looked like John Kerry was going nowhere until suddenly he was the nominee. At this exact time, in 2007, Hillary Clinton looked like she was running away with it until all of a sudden a guy named Barack Obama was running away with it from her. Historian Doug Wead here to remind us that history has a way of sort of bashing consensus estimates. Doug, good to have you.
Thank you. Good to see you, Neil.
You know, and we could go back, way back. I can remember when Scoop Jackson, Henry Jackson, the Washington state senator who looked like he was going to be the Democrats' 1976 nominee. I think a fellow named Jimmy Carter won that year. But again and again on both sides we see it. Yet we snap to these polls, which are the only thing we have, but we come to conclusions that is where it's going to go, right?
Yeah, well, the polls are very useful. They're relevant for raising money. They're relevant to get into the debates. And as the party rules are refined, they become more and more important. But they're not relevant for picking the next leader, as you point out, until you get right down when the rubber meets the road. 2012, for example, the front runner was Mitt Romney. He was replaced by Michelle Bachmann. A month later, Rick Perry. A month later, Herman Cain.
They all took a turn at that
Rick
time.
Santorum.
Yeah, the blast from the past, young man. I appreciate that. You know, Doug, another thing, too, I've noticed is that we get locked into sort of beliefs that are immovable, that in 1960, John Kennedy might be able to get the Democratic nomination, but he certainly couldn't win, too young, too inexperienced, certainly going up an incumbent vice president of the United States named Richard Nixon. That didn't pan out. Even when it came to Jimmy Carter, that it would be tough for him to beat Gerald Ford until, it wasn't. So what do we get wrong, and what do you advise us to do, even in the media, about handicapping these? So sometimes the only thing we have to go on is how much, to your point, money they're raising and attention they're getting.
Yeah, well, you start out with a heavy dose of humility. And,
yeah, you're right.
And sometimes the pollsters and the media try to revise it. There was a poll 2 weeks before the 2016 election where ABC Washington Post picked Hillary by 12 percentage points. You can't even find that story online now. They've had it removed. It's a bit embarrassing.
You know
so
what?
a dose of humility.
What happens, though, when we have a time like today in all these industrial states where the president's having a tough time in virtually all of them, in some cases down double digits to Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. We talk about the silent Trump vote that might be there, but is there enough of that vote that could make up for those huge gaps?
You know, I just have written a book. It won't be out till the end of November, but it's called Inside the Trump White House. And I interviewed the president and all his family, and they spent hours talking about the polls and Brad Parscale and the models he used and the number of people they attracted to the polls who had not previously voted and therefore weren't on anybody's list. It's really a Byzantine world, and they have hope based on their numbers, and they were proven right once before. So I wouldn't bet money on the next election at all. Not this early, for sure.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Doug Wead. Thank you very, very much.